Hello and welcome to UK Versus. Sorry, Tim was just telling me how I should play Dabby better, but was muted. We are going to be talking about Standard, where we have fresh off their Star Championship win Richard. We have fresh from Atlanta, UVS Hermit. And we have King of Memes and seasonal regional winner Tim Keith.
Right.
So, how are you guys doing? And start off with the question of the weekend. What can UVS do to improve your player experience?
My weekends were good. Had a bit of practice on Saturday, and then we had, like I said, we had our Tour Championships today. Really good turnout. We had 10 people, which is really good for just the UK in general. And that was even with a few people we thought might come not coming. Really nice turnout. Really good event, really fun. I really wanted the playmat, so I played cringy meta deck of UQ. But we had, 2 Toga 3s, we had an Eren, a Moonfish, a Bert, a Godzilla, a Big Mouth Titan, a Gentle Criminal.
No Smilings?
An Overhaul. And I think that's it. Unless we're getting someone.
Oh. No Smilings, no Ymirs, no Deku on the move?
No. I mean, we've kind of pseudo-banned Smiling locally. Not officially, but I think it's sort of a gentleman's statement. No one's going to play it.
Yeah, you're going to get some looks.
Yeah.
I mean, if none of you guys are going to regionals, you don't really need to practice against it.
Yeah, no, I think some of the guys are still travelling up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I think there's at least three or four of us travelling up to regionals.
It's just one of those things where let's practice against Smiling separately.
Yeah.
I take it the move was Gary.
And then you're sweaty.
It was, yes. But yeah, really, really fun event. And yeah, like I said, I wanted to play Matt, so I cringed and went 4-0 with Earth for UQ because she's kind of cracked, especially with vertical maneuvering. But yeah, in terms of the actual question, I think it's sort of retailer resources. So the thing that Levi did, the Grand Tour typey thing, but maybe a less sort of in-your-face marketing thing and more a just boots on the ground, reps that can help stores get play groups set up and stuff, especially sort of in the smaller areas, to go along and run demos because, we're sort of fortunate locally in that I came in and I knew the game, so I could help set things up, but not all stores have it, and especially with the learning curve of the game, having people who can travel to stores and say, hey, I will run the demo event because I understand the game, when you guys don't necessarily already know it, and sort of set up new groups that way, something along those lines. And just ways of helping that sort of grassroots stuff as sort of the primary thing. And then the other thing, which I think is sort of coming anyway, is to sort of improve the sort of top-end competitive side of it in terms of the pricing and make those regionals more appealing. And because regionals are fun competitive events, but fundamentally from a company perspective, they're a marketing thing. So the bigger and better and more popular they are, the more they then draw people in to want to conceivably take part and be part of that world. So, I think it's those two top-end bits. And maybe slow product down a bit. And just avoid that product burnout and give people that easy out of, there's too much product, I'm out.
That makes sense. I mean, product fatigue is a real thing, and not everyone has infinite funds and resources to be able to purchase a case of everything that's coming out. Especially if we look at ones like the Star Trek Challenger, which is the next big thing after AOT2, which is going to be 4 Challenger decks. So you're talking over $100 to get a playset of everything that you might need.
Well, it's more than that, right? It's
It'll be
assuming
240, 280, depending.
Yeah, probably about.
Yeah, so if you do 30 for each one, then
It's going to be over
yeah,
200. Yeah, it's going to be over 200. My brain did it maths. It's going to be well over 200.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on pricing, it might be better just buying one of each and then buying singles for the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending. I kind of like the like cost per playset of a unique card rate of challengers. Like if you compare it to a booster set, it's actually pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that it's all additive on top of the 4 booster releases that kind of, and it feels like, compared to like a Clash deck, it feels like a lot, but if you're someone that trades or sells your alts, then it's not that bad at all, because you're gonna get a lot of the cost back in that form.
Makes sense. Let's move on to you, Cameron. So, how have you been doing this week, and how can your player experience be improved?
Week's been good. I did not go to Atlanta, but I did watch a fair bit of it on stream. Congrats to Kevin Broberg for making everyone believe in Irwin before the drop of Irwin 2, of course. Yeah, we had my local championship yesterday, and because me and one of my players share kind of our horde, we were able to get all the Tekken characters, so that makes me happy. Played Kamui Woods 2, incorrectly, of course, because the whole shift attacks, apparently in order to shift they have to be played and not just added to the card pool, and only one shift attack says that correctly, that Tim provided for me today, and turns out that's the one I wasn't running, so thankfully it didn't really matter. I didn't get to shift too much, but Kamui Woods 2 is really hilarious. We had a Smiling Titan because one of our sweaty locals didn't make that gentleman's agreement, so we had to deal with that, but thankfully he didn't win the thing. He got put in his place by Godzilla.
Nice.
And as for the play experience, kind of a similar thing to what Richard said, having stores have more resources, especially when it comes to the company, because back in the pre-UVS games days, I'm sure Tim will remember this, they had the Scout program, which was basically players like me, like you guys, who knew the game really well, kind of acted as a go-between with the stores. So any questions they had, they could ask us, and if we didn't know, we could ask in the Scout forum. And it helps. I still do that with my stores now. I run demos all over the state of Oklahoma. Well, anywhere I can get, anyway. But sometimes it does feel like UVS Games itself isn't exactly available to stores or to like players even. But sometimes, like, one of my stores will get a pack of promo cards with no idea or no instruction of what they're for, so they'll have to ask me about it. And if I don't know, then it's just whether or not I can get a hold of someone at UVS Games. So yeah, more help with the boots on the ground thing can help. Honestly, with like the demo experience being easier, if we had things that we could do like as demo incentives, like, hey, here's an exclusive thing that you get for doing the demos, or like a coupon for something that you could exchange with the store, that then the store gets reimbursed through UVS Games or something like that. Because I don't know how it's like for you guys, but our locals has a whole bunch of game nerds that are all playing a whole bunch of different other games. And it's really tricky trying to coax them over to our game. We have some part-time players, but they're involved in 2 or 3 other games that usually all play on the same day, and they don't come to our game. So if we had something enticing that other games didn't have, I think that it would help generate at least that beginner publicity, and it would really help out. Although me living 45 minutes away from my nearest store would probably help out too. But this is what UVS Games can do, not what I can do.
Does the appeal of being integrated into the game if they win worlds not have a big appeal to them?
We haven't had a lot of. The main issue is I'm not getting people in the door for the demo. Like, they just see, oh, they're demoing a new game, we're just going to move on, we don't need another game. But if we had something like, say, hey, come get in the demo, get this free thing, that might get more people in the door. I do point out, and I actually have a bunch of Tim's character cards that I show off to new players and say, hey, you could be like this guy with all of his different cards, or Kevin Broberg's, or I have a whole slew of champion cards that I do show off and tell them. And back when they introduced the Turbo format, which was basically like a Challenger Series format, but it was just a 40 card minimum, they gave away a car for Turbo Worlds. They souped up an old car and gave that away. So I was like, hey, you want to win a car? You want to become a playable character? We got a whole bunch of cool stuff going on. And then at the first HLC, when they said they were giving away like what, $250,000 in prizes, that got people's attention.
Yeah.
So I think if there was more that we could dangle in front of new players and say, hey, come over here, this is what we've got, it would help us compete a little bit. Other than me just saying, hey, if you're interested after the demo, you can pick one of these characters from this book and I will build you your own deck for free to start with, because I know how hard it is to get into a new game. I taught myself how to play this game. It was not cheap. And I was a terrible teacher back then. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But so I build people their first deck out of all of my spare parts for free so they can get started for free. So if we had something similar to that, I think it would help at least get people started, because I know how daunting it can be to start a new game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was talking with Carl Bennett, the Oceanic Season 2 winner, and they've got UVS at PAX AUS at the minute. And on Friday, they did 8 hours of pure demoing at PAX with no breaks, and the demo people run ragged. But he was also telling me that when he does the demos and stuff like that, he pre-builds a bunch of like different decks, like a Kendo one and stuff like that. He stacks them up and basically gives them away to new players, going, if you enjoy the demo, come join the locals. This is good enough for you to have fun at locals. But that shouldn't be on it. It's good for us, the players, to do it, but it'd be great to have an official version of that.
Yeah, like
it's my back support when I have to empty out a whole bunch of stuff in my bag, so it helps me a little bit too, but not as much.
Yeah, like a couple of ideas you could have, like Final Max says in chat, like almost like give them a QR code type thing where they can create their UGN account, and then you've been through the demo, you get 100 points or something, right? So you can start off with some promos, or even like 250 or something, right? Like you can start off and get some promos. Or another idea would be something like maybe like a voucher to say, here was a voucher that's going to give you 10% off buying a Clash deck with this LGS you're spending with. The LGS gets the sales, and then whether effectively then UVS would then they'd have to mail in the receipts and shit, and UVS would reimburse them. Not necessarily that might not be financially viable, or like all the admin involved in doing that, but something along those lines to give them a better way of getting making their first purchase, because ultimately that's sort of what you want, is people buying stuff, because when you buy stuff you then feel like you're a bit more invested, rather than being able to take the demo, go away and not worry about it. If you like to buy stuff, then you're then, okay, I've got this thing that I want to play with, and you're getting sales to the door, your OGS. So, something along those lines might work.
The vouchers. Yeah, the UGN voucher is pretty aligned with their interests, right? If you give them enough to get like a play set, like 240 points or something, or most of these are 60 points. Because if they follow through, then, hopefully the demo is like, hey, let me show you, scan the code, you can do this right now. You get the UGN sign up, which is what they want, so they can start sending their newsletters. And if they go ahead and order some cards off the loyalty shop, then it's going to take a week or two for those to show up. So either the player's jumping right in and they're engaged with the game and they're happy when they get these, but if they kind of forget about it, they get this thing that comes in the mail and says, oh, by the way, you got these cards for this game. Didn't you want to check that out?
Yeah.
When you're on the page as well, because you've got the rewards there, you've also got stores and events right next to it. So when you've done your ordering, you go, what other stores are nearby? What events are going on? Your interest is going to be piqued because you're already there. So I might as well see when the next event is and if I can make it down.
Yeah, it's just a matter of their willingness to pay for the shipping. But if somebody goes through the lengths to order the cards, then paying for the shipping for a warm lead is probably pretty good.
I don't know how you guys in the US feel about it, but the new shipping system for international players, I love this. I will happily pay $5 to get same day as I ordered, like shipment information and have it arrive in 2 weeks. Because the free shipping was cool, but having to wait till the end of the month and then have it turn up 4 weeks after that, having it turn up 2 weeks after I ordered it, this is so good. I absolutely love this new system.
Honestly, I haven't had a chance to place an order since the new system. I want to get rid of all my packs first and then see where I'm at there. And I have to get a big old box from work because I have so many boxes of packs. So many.
Goodness.
But like the sort of the demo experience itself, like the new sort of scripted demo thing, like I think it's really good. I think it's really well done. For all the other issues people might have with Attack on Titan, I think that demo experience is actually really nice, and a really good way of kind of building someone into the game. So it's just what more kind of how do we get people to bite at the end of that, right? Like, so we ran one locally last weekend, and like we only had 3 people turn up for it. We were hoping for more, but if I think all 3 of those people bought something UVS related from the shop on that day and walked away with it, one of them shifted stuff around so they could come play in the tournament today, and just effectively turned up with like the Toga structure deck, and we made some tweaks with the stuff people had on hand. And a few stuff he picked up from boosters and stuff, just made a few tweaks to it. And obviously he didn't do well, but he had a lot of fun with it, right? And he's definitely keen to come back again. And then the other 2 guys, they're definitely they couldn't make it to, unfortunately, but they are definitely keen to come back. So hopefully they'll come down for some games on Thursday evening. But yeah, like I said, that demo experience felt a lot better having run it compared to when I used to sort of have to do it with like the Deku Bakugo one. It's a lot easier. That having that scripting is quite nice, even if you do know the game. Just being able to talk through bits and bobs.
I need to memorize the script. I'm supposed to be heading to Wales next Sunday to help out with a demo, and I completely forgot that the demo is 100% scripted.
I just had the book open. I just held the book open and read from it, and then kind of just expounded on like the details of whatever I was talking about. So it was kind of like, hey, I'm having to read this, but I'll also explain it in like a way you might be able to understand better rather than how they wrote it, because people learn at different rates. I thought I had something else. Oh, to make the player experience better, maybe slow down on the new mechanics. Especially after you say that you're trying to make everything simpler and more easy to approach for newer players, and then your next 2 sets increase the new mechanics by like 7 or 8 new things. As someone who's made videos for each mechanic in the game to kind of help new players around, that certainly threw off my filming schedule with Attack on Titan 1, and now we've got like the new thing on Attack on Titan 2, and so maybe calm down on that a little bit and let people get a little bit more caught up.
I mean, you say that, but we've already got a new skill tree and mechanic coming in for Sung Jin Woo, diplomacy cards coming in for Brad Boymer.
I'm still going to say that diplomacy is just like vestige. I'm going to say it's just a keyword trait until I see otherwise, but with all the different mechanics in Attack on Titan, and then we get Outwit, we get the skill trees, this is... If I'm having to make 1 to 2 videos for new players on every set, maybe you're not actually focusing on making it easier to understand. Just seems like the 2 things are a little in conflict with each other.
Yeah, Magic does what it does because Magic's been around since it's a game system that was cooked up in 1993, right? And it has a huge player base that have there's a very large number of people that have been playing for years and years and years, and that are not going to be very enticed by playing like just French vanilla Magic, right? French vanilla Magic isn't very interesting, so they come up with these new abilities every set cycle to add some spice and keep things different, keep things changing up. In UVS, character themes and kits have kind of played that role over the years without necessarily introducing new mechanics. And there's a case to be made for if you're going to do something enough times that it's worth keywording just for that set and make it not permanent, right? As opposed to writing out the text on, all 10 cards that you do this on. Like, there's some merit in that. But yeah, if like outwit is going to be a permanent keyword that we're still going to be seeing on new cards 2 years from now, and if the leveling up system is going to be in every other set, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's going to get out of hand. It's just a matter of how temporary are these, and unfortunately, like, the cards are legal for like 3 years, so you still might have to see any given subset of them at your locals, but the hope might be that like they're only going to see maybe one weird thing at a time every other week or something like that.
Yeah, it would really although it'd be cool for individual IPs for Spotlight to have their self-contained abilities, it does make your mental load in Standard a lot harder if MHA has these abilities, Attack on Titan has these abilities, you has these abilities, Critical Role has all these other abilities. Maybe we get like an upcast D&D kind of thing where you can pay more resources. And it's like, just it was a baseline.
It also depends on what they do, right? Like, outwit is kind of egregious because we're putting abilities on face down cards and asking people to deal with that. But if it's like if it's something like an EX, right? It's just like an ability that's on a card and the reminder text is a line and a half and explains what it does.
Yeah.
And people, when they see the card for the first time, they can read the reminder text and like, oh, okay, right, that's not too bad. It just sort of depends on the nature of the ability.
I've recorded an Outwit video and immediately went in there. I said, I know Tim Keith hates enhanced chicken, and Outwit just increases the enhanced chicken of what can I do my attack because I don't know what their face downs are, or they've got these Outwit abilities, so I have to play around all these other things. I don't know what actions they have in hand. And
be clear, I don't hate enhanced chicken. I think there's generally less of it than we believe, relative to the nuclear option idea of blowing up the enhanced step in certain ways. Yeah. We don't need to get into that right now.
How many people's head when we saw Outwit just immediately went to the Yu-Gi-Oh! You've activated my trap card sort of situation?
99%.
Yeah.
and also the thing with, like, obviously, Magic has new abilities every set, but 95% of Magic's new abilities are just a different flavor of kicker.
Don't they also have a shorter standard cycle than we do?
Yes-ish, but not by too much.
Yeah, Standard's not the main format in Magic anymore anyway. It's all Commander, so...
That was kind of when, before we get to Tim, we'll leave you for last because you probably have the most to say about the player experience. My initial response before saying that I want the community to go back to the lovely stories that I hear from the old heads about how nice the community was compared to how it kind of is now. My thing was I want more casual sort of like play. I want more Briarwoods, boss battle box toppers like we're seeing with Critical Role. Like you say, EDH is Commander is what's keeping Magic kind of going at the minute, and we don't really have anything that's that kind of casual focused, community focused sort of thing. All our main events, all our local events are competitive, cutthroat kind of events, especially as your community gets bigger, and especially as regionals approach. And scrambles are a great step forward. But I think just more support for teams, more support for retro, more support for Spotlight, the Challenger Series, actually seeing stores being incentivized to run those events and seeing, so like, we haven't got nationals anymore. So if we had a national retro, a national teams running alongside regionals or just as a one-off event would be very, very cool. That don't need to impact worlds, but would be community driven, sort of like bring your friends, have some fun. There's nothing majorly on the line, but the prizing are still cool.
Maybe like
I think that there's part of it.
Hold on, Richard. What are you saying?
Oh, sorry.
What are you saying?
No, go ahead. No, I cut Richard off. He should go first.
Okay, Richard.
And I was going to say, I think part of it is there's a, you sort of almost need to understand what game it is you're playing. Like, I don't know that the scope for more casual based stuff like a Commander is like the Venn diagram of the appeal of that and the people that enjoy this game has as much overlap in terms of, say, a game like Magic. I would say just in general, the game is not as casual friendly. And I think that's just intrinsic to the sort of system and the way the game plays. And that's okay. And maybe you can put sort of fun stuff like the Briarwoods, and I think there's definitely a world for that. But I think it's like you don't want to lose the identity of what this game actually is by trying to make it something it isn't. And like understanding that maybe there isn't a world in this game for something like a Commander, because it just like the sort of the fan base of this game and the way the game system works doesn't necessarily lend itself to that.
We already are kind of Commander. We have our leader, we have our resources, we have the kind of stuff. We just don't play Singleton, which is possibly a format people could look into doing. But there are a lot of comparisons between Universus and Commander that you can argue.
Apart from the fact we have the leader, not at all. Like Commander is primarily a multiplayer format, right? And Singleton, and a much more casual and fun format. Whereas, again, it's just sort of the way that I think the way deck building and construction stuff in this game, I don't think it necessarily lends itself too well to something like that. But you can certainly play this game on more casual levels, but I think like the need to force that isn't as huge with the general player base of this game. And yeah, I don't know. They're just like, I just feel like this game is a more complex game, and that's okay, and sort of own it rather than try to force it into being something it isn't.
I get that, but I'm just thinking for onboarding, solo leveling fans, Critical Role fans, things like that. I know a lot of people that have heard Critical Roles coming, that have heard solo levels coming, that have heard Team and T's coming, and are really interested in getting a hold of the cards, but have no interest in getting into a competitive game because they're either more casual gamers or they've already got their other games, like Cameron was saying. Whereas if there was a more casual way for them to play, if there was a way that they weren't just feeling they have to be competitive all the time, they can just have fun with this IP that they love, they're more likely to get invested in the game. And once they get invested in the game, that's when the competitive nature for their other card games is going to kick in, and they're going to want to keep getting better and better and better. It's just about getting butts in seats and getting them hooked through the IP, because once they're hooked through the IP, they'll stay for the gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps this is intentionally queuing me up, but going back to my whole essay that I posted the other week, like, why are we taking it as a given that if you're playing your modified challenger deck against a competitive deck, that we should just expect that you don't have any fun, right? We should, hopefully, right, if we're balancing our format well, we're capable of doing it if we care. We should be able to make it so that someone playing their challenger deck against a competitive deck can have some fun. They're not going to win, right? But you can foster a competitive scene where most of the top decks are playing an interactive back and forth type of game, even against a deck that they're kind of outclassing, right? This game's competitive scene works at all sorts of different power levels. We do not need to power creep levels to the moon, just to make the competitive format functional. So I put a whole Twitter thread basically about that and about the learning curve and some of this, right? Like, you're going to have players that either don't care about being competitive, or they're too new. And by too new, I mean they could be playing for 6 months to a year and still just not have gotten they haven't leveled up to the point where they can really be competitive yet, because there's so much of a learning curve in this game. And you need those players to be having fun at their weekly locals if you want them to go to their weekly locals. And if they go to their weekly locals and they're facing, Smiling Titan into Rodon into Recovery Girl or something, they're not very likely to come back the next week, right? They might say, I'll take next week off. And, hopefully, the real troopers out there will at least show up like every other week or something, but you don't want to limit yourself to only, the most steadfast of, committed locals players.
No, exactly, and that's part of why I asked you to be on this week, because I knew you put the big thread up and you were talking about the progression of players, and it's been great to see, because I know you and Cameron have also been having the discussion within a few of the other chats that we have, and it's just great to hear this kind of discourse going on among people. And it's one of the things that when they did the 50-50 sort of regionals announcement, there was going to be half draft, half on. This is terrible for players, because it's going to instinctively just make people have to go, I have results oriented thinking, I need to be winning, or I'm wasting my time going to regionals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Josh would say that in 2025 they're going to try to make regionals have more attractive side events and all of that. We're talking about Sean's plans for the NA regionals, at least are very much built around trying to make sure that the side events are there and they're premier events and people want to play in them. So, like I said, you need your non-competitive players to be having fun, and even if like they're facing competitive players, is probably important to like growing the game. Back in like historically, 2014, it's 2015, it's whatever. The expectations, the size of the company and sort of the level of ambition that the game really had was limited enough that the idea of like, we're just going to attract people who are willing to play this really competitive game was kind of just okay and relatively accepted. But if UVS Games wants to, grow to a size that justifies the size of their company, they need to figure out a way to make it so that locals can exist where you have really competitive players and not at all competitive players, and they're all having a good time.
Yeah, one of the cool things that is coming out next year with the Critical Role is the boss box topper. Because I was talking with some of my locals, and we're talking that sometimes if we turn up a couple of hours early before an event, we can all chip in, buy a box of Heroes of, I forgot the name, Exandria?
Yeah.
Exandria. And we can basically just sit there, take 6 packs each, build a seal deck, and take on the deck box boss while we're waiting for the event to start. And that's going to sell more boxes. It's a very cool thing you can do with friends, and it's a more casual way to play this game that meets all the requirements. You're going to be having fun. You're going to be playing the game. You're going to be exploring the IPs, and the company's making money.
That might not be a bad thing for like stores to do as like a small event, like maybe on an off day. Like after a demo, say, hey, if you enjoyed the demo, you can chip in on this, come to this event where you're basically buying 6 packs and playing this, and you got 6 packs worth of new cards, and you're just playing your little sealed event. Something like that could be pretty neat. But as for like the locals having equal amounts of fun, would you say, Tim, that'd be more an onus on UVS Games or the local players? Because some of my local players, we've all kind of agreed that if we're facing like a new player, we just scale it back a little bit. But we do have a new player who's, granted, very competitive, but also doesn't know when to just have fun. Because I'll just say he's a Rodon player.
Yeah.
But he's a Rodon player who doesn't keep track of board states, so he's constantly like going way overboard when he doesn't need to. So do you think it's more like something that we as players should be more focused on at the local level, or do you think there is something that UVS Games can do, like from a design standpoint, that could help with stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it has to start with UVS Games, right? Anything you can get in terms of local play groups self-policing themselves in certain ways is helpful, but you can't expect that, right? And you can have our groups where, there's 4 new players and 2 veterans, and one of the new players just goes and, net decks a Smiling Titan, and you're going to tell the new player not to play that deck they just spent $200 on or whatever. Like, you can't stop people from playing what they want to play at the end of the day. You can kind of hope that they will or they won't, but you can't tell stores to police that, right?
No.
The best way to deal with it is just to try, at the very least, like, you can't stop every pile of 60 cards that someone might make, right? You're not going to test everything. People are going to try to find ways to build decks that play one-sided games, because if you can make one of those that's good, that's a good competitive deck, right? But at the very least, you can just when you're looking at characters, if it's a character that's like designed from the outset to have completely one-sided games, right? Like you can look at a character and think about how they would play against a given challenger deck. And if it feels like the challenger deck would not get to play the game, then don't print that character. Right? We don't have that many of them, right? It's like, for arguably 3 to 6 or something like that, depending on what you want to count. And so it's just a matter of like having some restraint when you're deciding, at least with your character cards, so that if somebody does have a crazy deck, at least they need to find the pieces, or there might be something someone can interact with there. And just as a starting point, try not to go to that level, right? If you can keep the character cards at a certain level, and maybe after that you evaluate and you're like, man, maybe the decks that are playing all ultra rare attacks are kind of out of hand compared to what your regular locals are going to have, and you can start thinking about that stuff later. But at least as a starting point, like just and maybe it doesn't have, maybe it's not a ban list thing, maybe it is a ban list thing, maybe it's a wait until March before the Critical Role set comes out and then start calling things, or whatever you want to strategize to do. But we have characters mostly released in the last 6 months or so that just every time they show up at a locals, nobody who faces it is going to have any fun except for the really competitive players if they metagamed against it. Which, look, I can deal with it, right? You can put whatever in the format. I'll figure out, what I need to build to play against it. But like most people are not, well, hopefully most of your player base are not that level of competitive where they don't care what you throw at them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the characters and like some of those outliers are definitely a big part of it. I do wonder if part of it is down to the way the sort of power level of sets are designed now. Like if you look at something like Attack on Titan or Girl Power, a lot of the sort of power in those sets are very much at like the ultra rare and secret rare level. Whereas if you go back to set one, set one, there was a lot of issues with set one in terms of power levels, but in general, there was so much of set one that was just so very good and very meta at that sort of common and uncommon level. So, like, you could turn around, like, if, as a new player, like, you could turn around and say, like, here's a play set of like hardened jabs and self-sacrifices and destined to mainstream success, and like these are really powerful, really good cards that are just commons, and you can just have them, and you can make decks out of those. Whereas it being a bit, I think it's certainly more like concentrated at those upper rarities makes that getting in point a bit harder.
Yeah. Well, some of at least some amount of the set one cards at all rarities being playable is because it was a 1 set format and then a 2 set format, right? But still, like, you had your destins and things like that. I don't know, like I just think from a design and testing perspective, trying to square, we want people to want our ultra rares while also you're trying to expressly make sure that your commons and uncommons have some appeal, have some like that's doable, right? You can set out to try to make that goal, but in terms of the level of difficulty, I think the easiest thing to do to start with is to just be careful of the characters you're printing, and then the next step is trying to think about what the differences are going to be between someone with a common uncommon card pool versus someone with a max money card pool. And you want the max money card pool to be better enough that people are buying your singles, right? Single market is important because that drives box sales and et cetera, and people feel better about winning packs for their locals. But again, it's the difference between are people at least playing interactive games back and forth where someone can walk away from a losing effort and say, like, I had a good time, that was an interesting match, Yeah, season 2 NA was a wall deck meta for sure, right? It was the Godzillas just weren't getting any traction. Right?
So
They were losing to Rodons and Ghidorahs and et cetera in the NA, right? I know the EU results were what they were, but
let me just quickly repeat because I was muted because I was coughing. But yeah, I was just for those who quickly missed what I was saying, I was just talking about how for this year, season 1, season 2, and season 3 have all just been very aggressively dominated with Younger to Go, Godzilla, and Smilentine.
yeah. I don't know enough about how the UK metagame works. I believe there's groups of players that like to all bring the same decks. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I've heard there's like 5 or 6 guys that will show up to a regional with all the same deck. So if they all have a good day, you're going to have a really slanted top cuts.
From the way it was being talked about at Nottingham, there was a secret training group which was featuring Hardiman, the winner Greg Moss, and a few other people. And I was playing Godzilla. I just quickly thrown this Godzilla deck together, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I wish I'd been invited to the Godzilla training group. I could have had some of this secret spice."
Yeah. So it's tricky when you have something like that happen to try to figure out because if the quality of those players, they could have all chosen Rodon, and then we have a Rodon dominated top cuts,
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, I don't. There obviously we all know that the whole thing where there's only 3 months of the year where the UVS games gets data is a problem, and that's why they're trying to deal with that next year.
Hearing from Josh that we're going to be getting deck lists for locals and Star Championships, stuff like that back was a huge win because just getting that data in is going to be great.
Yes. Local championships and depending on the points balancing, there'll be events that people are like trying at, but don't feel so desperate to sort of cook in game and things like that. But as for the current meta, we were talking about this. We had a couple back-to-back local championships yesterday, and it's kind of. It reminds me. This won't mean anything to anyone in this call. It reminds me of the 2014 Worlds meta, and that was a different beast because the diversity rule was in effect. But what you had back then was a situation where there was sort of 5 known decks that were clearly on a different tier than everything else, and there was stuff among the everything else that you could play, but you had to really work at it and understand your deck and recognize that you're an underdog and maybe you're trying to avoid certain matchups and that kind of thing, right? And they had to ban the bejesus out of stuff after that event because when the diversity rules in effect, that is untenable. So you cannot have a 5-deck format in a diversity game. Now, it's sort of similar. It's maybe like 6 decks or something like that. It's you have Smiling, you have your Death Turbo Mill, whatever you want to put it on, right? Your coordinated effort, your combined firepower, Death Turbo Mill decks, and then you have Rodon, Ryukyu, and then like arguably Toga, Pony. Maybe you still have a card out for Ghidorah, depending on what you think about him right now. But it's like you have to be playing one of that batch, and if there's something else you want to play that's not in that mix, then you're probably either like an underdog or you're looking to dodge a matchup, or like hopefully you've really worked on your deck and really put a lot of time into it. You can have you've fine-tuned your little rogue deck there. Just because at that 2014 event, it was a completely different deck that won. It wasn't any of those 5. It was just someone who had been playing nothing but that deck for the last 2 years, Yeah. But it sort of has a similar shape to that where like there's a diversity there, right? There's a myriad of different types of decks you can play. Is it healthy? It's a tricky thing to define, right? I think Kevin in another Discord said, like, the current meta is like a bodybuilder in competition season. Right? In a sense, that person is in peak physical form, but also people aren't supposed to have that many muscles, It's like,
yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's been very kind of up and down this year. There's been certain points in the meta where it's felt quite healthy. Like I think maybe the meta sort of pre-Attack on Titan was pretty decent actually, and then just having these kind of like, you know, the smiling being the biggest one is like just this huge gatekeeper of you need to have to deal with this sort of thing, and if you can't, then you're not allowed.
Yeah, you need a lot to defend against it, and if you don't have a lot to defend against it, then you'd better be able to drag race it.
Yeah,
and those are your options right now.
I was talking to one of my friends about it, and they're still considering Rodan for regionals, but they were going, it's a great answer to Smiling, but if you just don't draw the right block zones turn 2, you just die. And it's a very weird position to put in. You mentioned, I know NA have just had their regional, so it won't be impacting your meta, but how do you feel Izuku Midori on the move and the new Tekken characters will impact Standard as well?
I think Mina 2 stocks are about to go way up. Not necessarily Izuku Midoriya, but that whole kit that he can run with like Void, with ranged and punch, with Mina 2, maybe even Mina 3. If someone
Mina
puts a lot of
2
work
doesn't have Void.
Oh no, yeah, she has
Chaos
water.
Death Water, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about, the water. This is why you shouldn't print characters with 5 symbols, because I get confused. We just went to a tune, and now you're going to give me a 5-symbol character? Come on now.
Yeah, if Smokescreen had any Mina 2 symbols, it would be an absolute beast.
Yeah. But I will say about our recent regionals, they had 63 people and 34 unique single characters. So I would say that maybe people were hopeful, but that feels like kind of the diverse, healthy style meta you want. But you do have characters like Smiling and Rodan that are known factors you have to deal with. I think, how to put this? I think the issue with Smiling is she's very simple. Like, she's simple to pick up and play, and that's appealing. But on the one hand, there's just, like you said, if you don't have the right pieces to deal with it defensively, or you can't outbuild or outrace, it does feel a little bad. But as you know, you want your characters to be simple to understand and easy to pick up. So in that way, it's kind of good. But it is also kind of like, well, do you just get wrecked or not? And then
Yeah,
you have some characters, kind of like Rodon, who feel like they control the game to the point where it feels like a stranglehold. And it's like, okay, if they just like, I played Rodan in my local qualifier yesterday, and he was in deadlock by turn 2, and there was literally nothing I could do because he had so much speed hate, so much zone change, combined fire powers, and it just felt like he had a stranglehold on the game. And by turn 2, you shouldn't feel like you absolutely should just quit the game and go to the second game and hope that you can do better.
Yeah.
So some stuff like that. I agree with what Tim was saying, where it's kind of hard to balance that, especially because I don't they design sets to be interactive within their own set first and then think about standard. Is that how they said? I vaguely remember them saying something about that
yeah.
a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
I'm cynical enough not to prescribe too much to whatever design says they think they're doing. But
because it does feel
yeah,
like when you see some of these designs that some of these are definitely designed to be more fun characters, where it's like, oh, this is a cool gimmick that we're gonna do, or this is really faithful to the character in the show or the manga or whatever. And then there's some that is just like, this is just a competitive character. We have the fun characters and the competitive characters, and it doesn't feel like they jive well enough together to where they say, yeah, this set is balanced with itself. And then you see like Smiling Titan and Challenger Deck Aaron, and you're like, how?
yeah. I mean, I so I imagine that, you know, the thinking behind Smiling Time probably was like, hey, it's a nice simple character, it'll be easier for people to pick up, mixed with we really don't know how playable slash it's really hard to judge the power level of all these X4s you're making.
Yeah.
Right, especially, you know, this was before they hired some full-time playtesters, so it was just kind of whoever they had that had a spare moment, I assume, or something like that. So, you know, I'm not necessarily mad that like they made a numerical mistake with how they tuned that character, but they have to recognize now that it is what it is. But you can make simple characters without making them like grossly statistically crazy, you know. I think Big Mouth Titan is a fantastic new player character, for instance.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's not bad at all.
No,
right?
not at all.
One of the things I will say is, although Tim has a great assault with the design team, one of the things we have been told is they are working 2 years ahead. So what the plans that are going ahead at that time and what actually goes ahead do affect. And I do feel that Attack on Titan was designed with a more sealed spotlight kind of environment designed. And when we had like the design of we're going to do a half standard, half sealed Swiss,
Right.
Attack on Titan feels a lot more balanced going into that kind of meta. But then the community's like, we don't want this. This is a terrible idea. And it's like, oh, we put all this hard work into this spotlight sealed kind of environment for Attack on Titan, and now it's just going to be completely exposed to the outside world. And yeah, it's not. It's kind of standard, kind of breaks it a little bit.
No, I'd say Smiling and the forecheck attacks are far more toxic in a kind of sealed slash. It's definitely spotlight world, right? You don't have capes or barrier shields. Like those forecheck attacks are far more toxic, I think, in spotlight than they are in standard. Like in standard, there are answers. In spotlight,
Yeah, I mean, their spotlight testers just weren't heinous enough to build the most degenerate Smiling Titan decks they could, right? It is basically like sometimes stuff happens where they might have or had, right? At the time that they were doing this, they probably just didn't have enough degenerate energy in whoever was testing this to really like, what's the most disgusting, sickening version of this character I can make?
I really want to know how Bertolt 2.
Send me an NDA. I'm all ears.
I really want to know how Bertolt 2 got through playtesting. That Bertolt 2 and Carter Titan.
No, that was Berthold 2.
Yeah.
There are people that believe that Heidi was okay to print. Heidi's one of my most hated cards of all time.
What about Carter Titan though? What about Carter Titan that lets you just commit your entire board down because it just says, yeah, let's go.
Oh, I mean, they just don't know the rules that well. But I imagine that Bertolt in practice is going to be a like 2080 matchup against aggro decks that just bursts him down, because if he's actually trying to turbo build his foundations no matter what, then it's going to be hard for him to defend himself in theory. But then he'll like 80-20 the really slow Void Rodon decks that just want to dirtle around forever. And it's just going to be this massively swingy. Like he'll have a lot of he went 5-3 at this tournament because he faced 3 aggro decks, 3 defensive decks, and coin flipped a couple other aggro decks or something. And it's it's one of those characters that's competitively okay, but probably not actually like healthy for the game being fun. But we'll see how it plays out. He's interesting in terms of what he's doing. Right, he's trying to do something unique and different, and I appreciate the effort. And we'll see. Maybe it doesn't play out to be as bad as we think it'll be.
Well, we don't know the rest of what's coming, so there might be some great balancing actions, and there might be some reason as to why we don't want our attacks removed or cleared, or ways that opponents can interact with cards that get removed during your turn. We have no idea. We've got another 100 odd cards left to go.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the forecheck attacks, right? I was very skeptical of them. Like when we saw them at the summit, and when we saw them throughout spoiler season, I was very skeptical of them being a thing. I figured nobody's going to be playing 8 or 9 diffs. That's ridiculous. I barely want to play a 5 diff sometimes. No one's ever playing 8 or 9 diffs. And I wonder if that was a lot of what people were thinking, from a design perspective of they're fine. No one's playing an 8 or 9 diff, right? And that's what we can maybe overtune them a bit, give them that forecheck and stuff. And actually, it turns out they're actually pretty good if you build around them. And I was completely wrong on them. Like I thought, 9 someone's ever play them.
There's nothing better than going first and knowing that you've got in your hand, you're building essentially your hand.
Yeah. And to be fair, right, outside of Smiling Titan, we haven't seen too many like successful forecheck tribal decks that people have to try really hard, right? You're playing like Anasa, you're playing like this Mothra with extra card draw that is possibly a little exposed to the Death Turbo Mill decks.
I'm still working on a Hood forecheck tribal.
I think,
Yeah, it actually like they weren't necessarily wrong us outside of the character that puts +5/+5 on them.
Yeah.
yeah, I think if Rhino hadn't received the nerf, we would have seen a lot more 4-check Rhinos.
Yeah, and you'd have arguments about whether or not that was the best way to go, but like, yeah, it needs to be a deck that is going in expecting to play at a certain pace or just has a lot of check passing power.
Yeah.
And the decks that are going in expecting to play at a really slow pace, they're not going to get they're going to get their foundations built one way or the other, whether they're checking mono fours or not. It'll help them get out of the gate a little bit earlier, but it's not shaped as extremely like, oh my god, this is ridiculous, as Smiling Titan is going to build out crazy and then they're going to play the 16 speed mid for 12. Like, yeah.
So, from a general point of view, since we are talking about standard, how healthy do we feel standard is at the moment for new players and for players that we have at the minute?
I think it's terrible for new players right now. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, we'll see if we'll see if maybe the new Deku. The new Deku is ostensibly well positioned to fight into Smiling Titan. So if that's what the new locals are playing, I mean, I know like 50% of my locals on Friday was people trying out the new Challenger deck. So maybe that particular matchup is less distressing, and he can play the game against Rodon because he's doing speed up down too. So if temporarily, so long as that's the thing that the new locals are gravitating to, it's probably okay, and we'll see how that shapes out long term. Like what do things look like after AOT2? These Star Trek decks, etc.
You have something to say, Cameron?
It was some of the similar vein of, as long as your locals are kind of not like policing themselves and kind of like taking it easier with newer players and helping them grow with the game as opposed to just beating them down. Yeah, some of these higher power level decks like Rodon and stuff like that could be really a hindrance to helping newer players grow. But I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm the type of person that I've been playing this game for so long that I don't really care about locals. So I'll just bring a fun deck every week and just like, here, deal with this. We're both gonna have to figure this out today.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just me, and I can't expect everyone else to be like me. Like I said, we've got some people who are actually trying to grind for bigger events and stuff like that. But I think that even if you win, as long as you can try to make it fun in a way, like I think it might have been Kevin Broberg that I heard on a podcast that said you can make it look close even if it's not, and people can still have a good time. And sometimes that's what I do with some of my newer players. But if they're trying to go and learn, okay, I want to jump into the deep end, they don't know how deep that deep end is. so
Yeah.
I would say that competitive standard probably not great for newer players. You'd want to build them up a little bit more, like maybe through like Challenger Series format or non-Attack on Titan Spotlight, or stuff like that, where you're just leveling them up slowly. But then we get into the argument of how many events does your store have a week, and
Yeah.
do you separate your casuals from your professionals or veterans or whatever you want to call them, and it just becomes kind of messy. So it does feel kind of messy right now, in terms of for newer players or players who are kind of not new but still not at that level of ready to slam their heads against that brick wall of what the best standard characters are.
Yeah, I'd say out. Well, if you take away the outliers, right? So you're Smiling, those top 4 or 5. I think that kind of murky underbelly of everything else there, I think, is probably reasonably healthy and balanced, and you can have a good time fighting in that pool. It's the moment you start introducing the sharks, right? Your Smiling Titans, your Rodans, your Ryukyus, to an extent Toga 3, but Toga 3 is probably fine in that thing. But those sort of outliers, then I think the rest of that sea is reasonably healthy. It's just those sharks that are messing things up and bloodying the waters.
Yeah, and our locals it's a lame duck meta, so we're on Friday nights, like the local championships are another matter, but like on the Friday nights, we're just gonna be playing. I brought Challenger Aaron. Every single foundation in my deck had a flip cost. I was there. I wanted my whole stage upside down, right? And so we're playing some stuff that we just kind of like want to try out and experiment with and stuff. And some of it might be kind of competitive, and some of it not. Kevin's net decking the Aaron that he faced in top 16. But before that, right, up in the 2 months leading up, and I'm sure as soon as AOT 2 comes out, it's going to be just like this again. Our locals is 6 dinosaurs and 3 to 6 newer-ish players, like people been playing for like 6 months to 2 years. And look, that's a good chance for us to test our competitive decks against each other, and so that's what we do. And the players that maybe aren't that competitive or they're newer or whatever, it's just sink or swim for them, because if we didn't bring our competitive decks, it'd feel like a waste of time when we face each other 2 rounds out of 3 or whatever. And people have different levels of commitment. Most of us barely have 1 deck built, let alone 2, in terms of bringing a separate deck just to play against those other people. And they don't want to be babied either, right? Like, no. They don't want to be like, oh, I'm facing you, I'm going to bring out my bad deck. That's a little disrespectful, and they're improving, right? They're not like bad at the game or anything, given the situation, but we're kind of
against Tim Keefe and Karen Bro.
Yeah, we kind of have the toughest locals in the world, probably. I
don't call it my bad deck.
Better at this game I would be if I lived in Rochester.
I don't call it my bad deck, but I went down to local qualifier last time I went down because my locals is 2 hours away. And there was a new player called Danny there who was testing out his Vax deck. So I was like, I'm not going to play the Dabby deck that's the 4-check punch you in the face with 18 damage cards. And I played some games here and I pulled out basically my interesting decks. My Shell Game Levi, where I'm just picking up multiple cards in my turn, and he found it really interesting to see essentially his weapon package being played a different way. And then I dropped the Joker Void Combined Firepower mill deck, and he sat there going, I have no idea what this deck's trying to do. And then I popped off the I'm going to mill out your entire deck. He's like, that's really cool. I was like, yeah. I was like, rather than playing a bad deck, I wanted to play interesting decks with a new player who was going to see what I love about this game, the interesting interactions cards can have when you play them in certain ways. That got me hooked on it, and going, I'm going to share what I love about this game with a new player, and hopefully you're going to get hooked on the same thing I'm hooked on.
That's kind of how I treat my locals too. Just build something fun, interesting, do my serious testing on my own time, if I can find people to test seriously against, which some of my locals are getting there. They're getting there, but I only have one hobby and I think about it 24/7. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's just a local's perspective. You do need to either sort of self-police a little bit or make the playing grounds very clear as to what's going on. Like if it's a case of, right, we are having this week, we want to test for regionals. We're bringing all our sweaty, miserable decks. We're more than happy to play against you. You just might not have fun with it, right? When it comes to sort of newer or less competitive players.
Yeah, and like here we are having this conversation, this debate about how much locals should self-police themselves. US games should just make this not a problem, right?
Yeah.
Just don't print characters that produce the situation. It's
yes.
Going
on to that aspect, we had the ban list drop this week. Were you guys surprised to see no changes?
No. Yes.
No. And
I thought with like a few weeks before the UK event, and we're not even sure, if or to what extent the Oceanic event was going to fire, I thought they'd take the chance to maybe not repeat the thing where, all 3 regionals have. Well, season 2 was fine, but like repeat the season 1 thing where all 3 regionals had the same stain on it.
Yeah.
It felt pretty clear that combined firepower is not really going to be a tenable situation, and Smiling Titan's probably not a tenable situation. So I was surprised that they went ahead and just did nothing.
I mean, Oceanic is looking at, from my people on the ground to be a 12-person regional minimum, which is about what they
Okay.
had for season 1. There's only 3 people signed up at the minute, but I have a graph that I was given to me by some O'Shellers. They've done some research, they've got feet on the ground, and it's looking like a 12-person with Keandre and Carl, the previous winners, who are going to be acting as judges. So they're going to have some decent judging out there as well. Hopefully we get some finalized word about the stream, because as far as I know at the minute there's no stream confirmed for Oceana, because usually UVS have said, like for you guys, they said something a week ahead. We've not heard anything. But yeah, I was kind of shocked that Smartine didn't get touched, that Combined Firepower didn't get touched, or Azor didn't get touched to stop Combined Power popping off. And the big one for me was with Paul Phoenix. I was surprised, like, what the dog or something, because that's a perfect opportunity to hit that card and justify it in a way that NA couldn't really, with a card that NA didn't have access to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't surprised there was no changes, but I think they should have been changes, right? Yeah, I think Smiling and Combined Firepowers are the definite outliers. Like, Combined Firepower is too free and does too much. Like, I think kneecapping it, no one really would cry too much. Smiling, again, just give it the OGO2 treatment, either make it non-symmetrical or have to commit to do it or something, right? I think there are ways of
Bury
kneecapping
her.
Smite. Yeah, just
Nobody's gonna care. Just kill her.
no.
I think
Once per game on the enhanced. Let's go.
I think
Yeah.
I think our attack on damage is fine. I think commit would also be fine with with reading up once per turn. So basically, you turn it into a twice per turn. I don't see Combined Firepower getting hit because it's a challenger card, and that would affect the sale. That would affect the sales of challengers. It would affect the bottom line, and stars would have them kind of sat around. I think Azor is more likely to get hit because of Combined Firepower.
I think
got, like, what, 3 months left?
6, but yeah, if there's nobody that's like, oh man, I just now realized that I should own Combined Firepower. Let me go buy 2 Challenger decks. Anybody who's gonna buy those Challenger decks for the sake of getting Combined Firepowers already has.
No.
And maybe one of the reasons they're waiting is to try to like filter that through the other regions and make sure they get whatever value they get out of people chasing meta cards before they hit them. But that's kind of that's a little bit of a. I would think they would just do what they think is best for the format.
I was more thinking of a new
motivated
player
by sales like that.
I was more thinking of a new player picking up a Godaro deck, turning up at locals, playing the first game, playing Combined Power, and their opponent going, "Yeah, no, that's bad."
Your precon is legal, right? If you're playing the exact precontracted list, it's fine.
Okay, yeah.
You just let it go, right?
So as long as you got nothing different,
and locals aren't going to give the. Like, that's not a real thing.
But it feels bad as a new player. It kind of diminishes your experience. You might not have the worst time.
I mean, when they read that card and they completely freeze up in blue screen and smoke is coming out of the ears because they have no idea what this card does anyway. Mm-hmm. And probably the advice that you tell them right now is like, just don't worry about reading that card. Just pretend it's a blank block if it's really their first locals. And now you get to say, like, first of all, don't worry about it. Second of all, the card's banned anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, if there is one of your local players, or, newer players who have built their kind of, Rodan or Ghidorah or whatever, effectively slightly modified challenge deck, and they love playing Combined Firepower, and it's totally fine. Just let them fucking play it locally and ignore the ban list, and who cares, right?
Yeah. I mean,
like, it doesn't really matter.
I do like the attitude UVS does have about that of stars do what stars need to do to get butts in seats. And a great example of that is the one my go-to example of it, really, is Spain. They've got stars in Spain where they play with set 1 and getting to see Jester with Cool Student and Release. I played against a Krista running 1.3 million volts, and that was disgusting. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be playing this at locals." Like, I'm really glad I don't live in Spain. That's just still on everything going into 1.3. Yeah, no, I hate that.
I mean, I think there might be something there with that modern format, but I might be in a minority.
Oh, yeah, I told David about that. He's like, "Oh, yeah, we've invented a new format." It's like, "No, you've just stolen Spain's format. Let's get this right." Oh.
yeah, we've got our next modern, however you want to call it, tournament coming up. I think next Saturday we're doing Fire and Water.
Oh, the Giro's not in this one, so
No.
it might be a little more interesting.
Well, yeah, and also like effectively, we sort of have a once you've used a character, you can't use them again because we're going to try and cycle through all of the opposed pairs.
If we're talking weird formats, Connor and I have built our first food decks, which are all cards that have nothing. Have to be related to food, and through a technicality, I'm running floating around my babies because Sasha has canonically eaten babies.
As someone who has
AOT
never
is so
seen
weird.
Red Attack on Titan, I'm mortified. Also, as the person
Yeah,
who revealed Sasha to, I am mortified.
yeah. Every time someone just says something about Attack on Titan story, I'm just like, man, this is not selling me on this.
Yeah, we were just talking about like I really wish I could play like floating around my babies and stuff. So I was so like, yeah, Sasha's eating babies. I was like, excuse me.
I look forward to
Recaps video.
yeah. Let's just see the frigid heatwave Godzillas. That sounds. I think that sounds hype, but I was definitely like I've been playing Godzilla a little bit just to mess around with it because they more or less printed a character exactly for me, so I should probably try it. For people who don't know, I played a Destroy the World character for like 2.5 straight years.
Oh, nice.
It was kind of how I put my name on the map. So I should try this one a little bit, even if I don't have too much faith in it. I'm definitely missing like cards like Frigid Heatwave that just like he has some consistency issues that he needs to figure out.
I don't know if you saw it in the Retro channel on the main Discord, but for Retro this regionals, I've built a Colossus Thermal Blast Mina 1 deck that's using Merciless Master to just keep putting Thermal Blast on the top of my deck as long as it hits.
All right.
You can also
I dislike Thermal Blast, but hearing someone use Merciless Master, I think I did I never remember which 3 Mega Man characters I did from that set, but I'm pretty sure I did Ring Man. I'm glad to hear Merciless Master getting used.
Yeah, I was like, how can I keep stacking on top of deck? So if you go off Chaos and and go to Life, you can just check it turn 1, blow up all their foundations, stick it on top of stick it into your momentum. Then on your turn, stick it on top of your deck and go, I'm going to play it again. It's like, oh, let's go.
So we just like don't make cards that are either like useless or abusive.
They fixed Shishi Wakamaru. They forgot about Mina 1 because she's not standard.
So they don't care, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't really care about Retro too much.
It's a nice follow-up for my Reversal Dabby deck, just to meme on people with Thermal Blast Mina 1. But we're not here to talk about Retro, although it would be great just to sit here and talk about Retro. We're here to talk about Standard. And what are you guys expecting from Oceania? Because it's next week, expected 12 people, and it depends for me if Young is still on overhaul, like he has been last few times, or if he's cracked into these new characters. Because I could easily see Young rocking up with Smiling Tide and just taking the entire thing.
Yeah, I've long since abandoned any attempt at guessing at what Oceania is. Maybe they're all going to play the new Deku Challenger deck, right? You pick that up and it's not too bad.
It would be the first time that they just turned up with a Clash Shell Challenger deck and rocked it. Spoilers for my Oceania video that's coming out next week. But apparently they have been told by some people in UBS that Oceania plays Universus the way it's intended to be played. It's everyone else that's making it more complicated.
Sure.
I'll be honest, I don't really pay much attention, so I would say I don't expect anything.
That's there are some very strong and good players, and Young's a great example of them. But you've got Zane, you've got James, you've got Bailey. I don't think anyone who's ever met Bailey has a bad word to say about Bailey. Even Justin, who went out there to meme and like have a go at people internationally, hasn't got a bad thing to say about Bailey. I can imagine Justin's thinking.
It's just I usually I don't catch the streams
That's
and
fair.
stuff, so it's like I don't know very much, so I can't expect anything. It'd be rude
Uh,
of me to expect something if I have no information.
For me, most of the time when I can play is before I start editing during the day, which is 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Our time, which is in the evening down under. So I play against a lot of Australians and UK people that are off work or Americans that are just awake.
Whatever Cam's doing. Yeah.
What about the UK regionals? Are you expecting an uprising of Deku Sixes, seeing as, like I said, he has got some good answers to Smartine?
Still think he's mid.
I'll let
Yeah, I mean, someone has
I'm
to
not
crack.
really
Everyone with a Godzilla -1.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if people can crack it. It's one of those, like, it feels like there ought to be something there. There's certainly defense there. Is like the offensive turn your stage sideways plan actually real enough? If not, what else can he figure out how to do? Like, there's a puzzle to crack there. I know I'm going to try him at some point as a way to 4x Trickster's Blessing, but then and you hope that he can solve life's problem against Smiling Titan by being who he is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I don't know where that road's going to lead, if it's going to actually be real or not.
For those of you who are not aware and are quickly Googling it now, Trickster's Blessing is the critical role foundation that says when it's committed in the enhanced step, you take a card from either player's discard and you put it on bottom of their deck.
It's committed during an attack.
No, it's committed during attack, sorry.
You can just throw that into any deck on symbol,
Yeah.
and when you block, you commit it, and then you go take the risky encounter away.
Yeah, take the risky, take the combined, take whatever you were keeping down there, and you just go get wrecked. Your thing falls apart. Tag costume I think, is an absolute beast. I know Luke Quincy's been on Void Jin. He's the EU number 2 player at the minute, and he's gone from Void Jin to Void Midoriya because you get such cool interactions. You get to just mess about with that. He's just won the Sheffield Star Championship with that, because I'm a sad person who didn't get to take part in any Star Championships because my partner's away. So I've been living vicariously through the UGN tracker.
Yeah, he's certainly a good face for the Void defense deck that's kind of existed with different people on top for this whole past few years.
I miss Midnight One so much.
I question whether he's better than just playing Rodan.
That's probably the question. But hey, my base expectation for the UK until we see otherwise is that there will be another secret testing group that tunes some deck, and we'll see 5 of something in top cuts, and it's gonna be like, oh my god, this character is really crazy, and it's just 5 people really worked on this one thing, and it could have been any number of things.
I don't expect too much smiling, unless that's what they cook up. I don't expect too much smiling, just because partially it's a very expensive deck to put together with lots of ultra rares, and we don't necessarily have that kind of singles market here. I expect there to be plenty of Zilla still. I'd expect plenty of Rodan. I'd expect maybe plenty of Ryukyu, because again, she's just a very powerful and very cheap deck to put together.
There'll always be Big Cat. There'll always be Big Cat. Yeah, go on. But no, I really relate to what Cameron said earlier. Like, if he lived near Tim, like Rochester, how good he would be. Being in an area where I get to play the physical card game like once every 2 months, I feel really does dampen my skills. Like, I feel I'd be a lot better if I could play weekly.
Yeah, or like I do have a local that I go to well, now I have 2 locals I go to every week.
Ooh.
But I have the problem of being one of, if not the best players there. So I don't really get a lot of grinding done, to better myself, because I'm helping better other people. So
Yeah,
most of the people in Rochester are better than me. So I would finally be able to grow as a player, from ramming my head against that particular brick wall.
do you know what
When I sit across from Tim Keefe playing Tim Keefe in a retro event, I don't feel completely embarrassed.
That's fair, but I mean,
I'm used to losing to my own character. This has happened a lot,
that
actually.
was just so hilarious that I drew you round 2 in that retro event. I was like, of all the people.
my locals would refer to you as the boss then, because I had the same kind of situation. For the last 2 years, I've driven 2 hours to go to Southampton, and they've considered me the boss of the area because when I go down, I either get first or second. And this year is the first time I've dipped into like the bottom half of the bracket. And the players that are beating me are absolutely loving it because they're taking down essentially the two-time world attendee, top 8 consistent player that's coming down to their events for the big events, and they're getting to beat them down. It's like, as much as I don't enjoy winning, but I'm having fun just seeing your reaction to beating me. I have to forget that I'm considered a good player by people.
I don't have it around me, but when they started with just like the My Hero only formats, I actually refused to take part in tournaments because of the skill discrepancy. And I did do like a final boss challenge where the winner of the tournament could play me for extra prizes from the store. And one of my locals actually made me a League of Villains mat that said final boss on it. And I wish I could show that off, but I think it's in the living room somewhere and I don't have the time to run and look for it.
That is
But
really cool.
I do love stuff like that. And, as a player who's usually better than most of the people around me, not to brag or be, too big on myself, that was something I thought that was really cool that I could do to offer some incentive for competitive growth among the newer players, but also let them play in their little kiddie pool until they're ready to graduate.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that when you are the biggest fish in the small pond, it's about also how you play rather than what you play. It's not about just being like, oh yeah, you can't take back that enhance, or you missed your response window, or yeah, you missed that interaction, you don't get to do it. It's like, no, that's cool. You take that back. I'd rather us play a game where you're playing your best. At a star championship, maybe you're a little bit more, but if you're just at locals and you're rules lawyering every single interaction, yeah, you're being a bit of a dick.
Yeah, that's a miserable way to go about it. I will lightly say like, hey, that's not quite how this works. So just for future reference,
Yeah.
this is fine now, but for future reference, this is how it's got to go.
Yeah, it's one of those things
So
that
that
where
they
you
learn.
go, if they play breaker attack and you got any responses and they go no, it's like, are you sure about that? I don't
I
want
do that all the time. I do that with my people who I've been playing with for years or even months. Oh, yeah, like any response? No, and I'll just look at the board and I'll look at them, and then they're like, "Oh, he's waiting. There must be something I'm missing."
Yeah.
It's just like there's just little
Yeah.
ways that you could do to kind of like not like preach or to like lecture, but to teach and help them learn on their own so
Yeah.
that they actually remember what some things do. But it's just really funny because there's one guy who's been playing with me since I learned how to play. I just smack him with it. I'm like, nah, you've been doing this long enough. You should know. You should know.
You should know better by now.
You should. It's been 7 years. You should know better by now.
He gets the oldest kid treatment. You're the parent of the store. It's like you should know better at your age. The younger children need my attention.
Yeah, pretty much. My store tells me that I'm often the most hardest working unpaid intern they've ever met. So
I feel that.
Yeah, and just circling back to the scout program, going all the way back
Yeah.
way earlier in the show. That's a tricky one. It's back in the old days, they kind of had it set up where like every store needed to have a designated scout, and I've seen cases where like people get way too caught up in like the scout status, and some people like think it's a power trip thing, or other people think like, well, why can't I, or they expect too much of the person because, oh, you're a scout, you're supposed to XYZ.
I was a scout for 3 stores. I understand that.
Yeah. So
stores, 3 hours away from each other.
Yeah, so they need to figure out. It's certainly useful to be able to have like player representatives for stores that want to have one, or that where that's useful to have, but they need to figure out how to square that with like have a program where it's not this like commonly, oh, you have this title or something, but you're still like recognized as a person that can be helpful to stores for where they need it.
Yeah, or that maybe like so that they don't feel so like the unpaid intern. Like I could see maybe
Yeah.
kind of like earning more, like getting points, like if you're a scout or a judge or something like that. Because I know way back in Jasco's day, they talked about having like the scout store. I don't think that ever got off the ground,
Oh,
but
I don't know.
yeah, but it just kind of feels bad when you know you're putting in so much effort
Mm,
to try to help this game grow and you're not seeing any return from it either in the store, in the player base, or from the company. So
right.
it kind of feels bad, but at the same time, I do know that I'm a player. I want this game to grow, so I got to put in some work. But it would just kind of feel better if you knew the store kind of had your back on that and it was willing to help you help them.
That makes
Right.
sense. Yeah, I do think the a scout system or a sort of like local pinpoint person for each store would be very, very cool. One of the things I've always felt was a missed opportunity was kind of like a symbol ambassador sort of thing. I don't know if anyone here ever played the standalone card game Gwent from The Witcher 3, but at one point, Project CDR had content creators and had players basically act as faction ambassadors. So if we had like an order ambassador or something like that, someone that was basically a community representative that you could also bring up issues or talk to you about, or you have these sort of like discussions that were about enhancing your play experience and all things like that. Then they could take to UVS.
That's something I kind of felt like they were trying to do with the summit that you guys had earlier in the year, where you could actually be kind of like an in between with the community, because obviously we all deal with community members and stuff like that. So it was giving the community a voice through you guys
Hmm.
to kind of meet with them back and forth and stuff like that.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, for me, I absolutely adored the summit. I loved the summit. It lit a fire under me to get more content out there. And anyone who has seen our content before the beginning of June and our content now, it's complete night and day. We've got our first video close to 1,000 views, and I'm scared for
Well,
that to go over 1,000 views. Like, just stay under.
Nah, go over. You're doing good. You deserve the recognition.
It's just me for 2 minutes showing I know nothing about Critical Role. People are just there to look at the products.
hey, there you go.
Hey, that's more eyes on the products.
Oh, exactly. But no, it's one of the things that I always just thought was a missed opportunity, just having either content because I've always well before more recent times when I was just playing Dabby or just playing a singular symbol, I was always just referring to myself as the Chaos Community Ambassador because I'll happily sit and talk to you about all things Chaos for hours, and now I'll just sit and talk to you about the game for hours.
Yeah, I think we would need not to. I have mixed feelings on symbol identities, but I think we would need them to be much tighter and more defined before we could probably have something like that that makes sense.
Yeah.
The me of 5 years ago might have said like, oh, I really like these two symbols, but it was really like I like these cards that are on these symbols, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. And symbol identity is something that they're working towards. We did see it a bit in AOT one, but it was contradicting messages within like the air symbol, which wanted you to have lots of stuff in your card
Yeah,
pool and clear stuff from your card pool. So maybe
yeah, you know, you don't want to get me started on that. We'll be here another 30 minutes.
That's a whole nother video.
we'll bring you. How about we take the symbol identity conversation and we pencil in for after AOT 2 and we see how the symbol identity is improved or gone further into chaos through AOT 2.
I can see it now. The Tim Keefe rant cast.
There's already a couple of ranty videos I'm working
I would
on.
happily just sit here and record hours of Tim Keefe ranting about nothing, and I know it'd do better than most of my videos.
What's great is I listen to Tim Keefe videos when I first get to work when it's all quiet because for some reason his videos are always quiet for my YouTube. I don't know if it's just how you record them or what, but they're perfect early morning listening. So whenever I get to work in the morning and I see a Tim Keefe video, I'm like, oh, cool, something to listen to right before everything gets loud.
Okay, Tim, so what you got to do now is record a bunch of ASMR shorts specifically for
I
Cameron.
wouldn't go that far.
Right, so I'm going to be up early for taking Flynn to school. Richard's had a very long day and has to be up early as well. And you guys have got better things to do with your afternoon than sit here and complain about Universus. Well, actually, probably you don't.
It's 2 hours before the Mets game, and/or I'm rating. I'm not sure which one yet.
Fair enough. So, has anyone got anything last they would like to talk about or bring up or say?
Yes.
Ooh.
I got 3 shout outs. So one of them, shout out to the Houston Texans for beating the snot out of the Patriots. Go Texans. Secondly, shout out to the Lions who are currently beating the snot out of the Cowboys because, about the Cowboys. And thirdly, on behalf of Harry, a card that I came across today or the last couple of days because Harry's been playing it, and I think possibly a little underplayed because actually it's been surprisingly really good, was Sword and Shield. Just never seen he play, but actually he's been surprisingly good. Like against me when I was playing it, like he was playing Big Mouth Titan against my UQ.
It's a niche,
and it's just always really, really annoying.
It's cool, but yeah.
Is Spear and Shield?
Yeah.
Sword and Shield has an entire pocket of buried memories for
Spear and
Shield.
Spear and Shield, yeah.
Not mostly not good memories.
The Fat Gum Kirishima action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the one mid breaker one, and also you commit a foundation, and I get a free momentum from it. Just felt very, very good. But
another foundation you can commit. Trickster's Blessing.
And if you're playing Big Mouth Titan, I guess you can pick up the Sword and Shield, the Spear and Shield every single turn.
Yeah.
Not a bad little synergy, but yeah. Trickster's Blessing and Strategic Maneuvers are a great reason to play Life in Deku 6 because you just get to keep stacking stuff at the bottom, get rid of all your opponents' discard love, and Tad Costume with Strategic Maneuvers is a dumb combo. You just go, yeah, you're going to break me, cool, I'll pop it, then I'll play Strategic Maneuvers, build it back in, and go, yeah, try doing it again, let's see what happens. I've got a friend, Andrew, who is adamant he's playing Midoriya on the move at regionals, and he's running Trickster's Blessing, he's running Strategic Maneuvers, he's running all these niche little ways going, I may not win, but I'm going to annoy the hell out of everyone I play.
Sometimes that's just the way to go.
Exactly, that's a great way to go. Right, I guess we'll wrap it up there. Cameron, anything you would like to send out into the community before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just think that we're on the way to getting better as a standard format, like design wise and stuff. I think there are fewer dark spots than, especially in the way back when Tim and I would remember. There are definitely some times they just threw their hands up in the air and said, "You guys figure it out. We're done with it." But yeah, I think it's, aside from a few outliers, not bad. Be nice to your locals. They're trying for the most part, I'm sure. And yeah, I just hope to see more of retro because I love retro. I like taking the weights off and stretching.
That's fair. And as well as being nice to your locals, just be nice to everyone in the community as well. And as someone pointed out on Facebook when we were looking at the Enhanced Play experience, be nice to UVS. They are people. They have feelings. And when it came to things, they're trying. They're doing their jobs. And when it came to things like the Wish tournament and stuff like that, we jumped down. Well, people jumped down their throats. Some of us remained composed. And no one's ever really apologized to UVS for jumping down their throats and having a massive go at them. And it's like, they are people. They do have feelings, and they're trying their best. So
I'm sure they would also say that they can handle it. So
that's fair. As we know, Bill Stark was a stand-up comedian, so I'm sure he has got some thick skin. Tim,
so yeah, obviously. So I'm going to say, everyone go check out obviously UVS Hermit over on his YouTube channel and check out one of his videos. Subscribe to him, or we don't like you anymore.
And Tim, have you got anything you'd like to throw out into the universe?
No, off the top of my head, just shout outs to Rochester CCG as always. If you're stateside anyway, it's a pretty good place to go pick up some cards. And I just did my round of AOT set 1 singles buying because I skipped out on buying boxes of that set just because of the nature of the set and what it is. Definitely found a lot of better prices on Rosters to CCG, especially with the loyalty discount. So it's a pretty good place to shop it. And they're working on a forced overhaul of their website, so it's a little bit cleaner, but still has some stuff to work out, some kinks to work out there. But it's pretty usable. I just used it the other day. And yeah, besides from that, Satonis on YouTube, CETONIS, TK Satonis on Twitter, because the name was taken. Don't post videos on any kind of a schedule. It's kind of like 1 to 3 a month, depending on when I'm feeling motivated or if I have something to do or not do. So, but yeah, just go ahead and stuff there.
Yeah, big shout out to Rochester CCG, one of the best single providers out across the pond. And I know from talking with Card Goblin that they were very honoured and very shocked to know they were on Sean's radar as a UK singles vendor. That it was such an honour to actually be recognised by CCG and be talked about. That was really cool for them. So I don't know if that will make Sean's day, knowing that they're really happy with it, that he's on the radar. Richard hasn't sent me a game he's been playing this week. I guess he's just been practicing for Star Championships. So we'll wrap up here. Thanks.
Yeah. Everyone. So yeah, as usual, thanks everyone for watching and following on Twitch. Obviously, everyone on YouTube, do all the things, like, comment, subscribe, and obviously go check out these guys on their channels. And we will catch you on the next one.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be back next Sunday, but it depends on when I get back from Wales because I'm supposed to be helping Demo out there. And if we'll think of something to talk about then, we'll come up with a topic. But yeah, thanks for our guests, and yeah, do all the interaction things and let us know what you thought about our opinions. Bye.
Peace out.